Most of you are probably not aware and are more than likely not all that concerned with the recent, by recent I mean very recent, decision by the Supreme Court in which they ruled in favor of a girl or a woman that was wearing a headscarf in violation of Abercrombie & Fitch's look policy. So this girl tried to file an application to work for Abercrombie & Fitch, just a basic store. She took their test, passed everything, but Abercrombie & Fitch has a look policy in which they ban certain features for people, and this is a neutral policy in which you can't wear too much makeup or too much nail polish or too much of whatever. You also can't wear black and an assortment of other things that are in accordance to their dress code, essentially. So this case went all the way to the Supreme Court, and it was backed by the ACLU. Unfortunately, in this case, the ACLU, which I am a member of, backed this girl, Samantha Aloof, or whatever her name is. So in this case, this girl was to start working for Abercrombie & Fitch, but in the process, she was essentially rejected because she is a practicing Muslim who refused to remove her headscarf in order to work. This violated their look policy, and she was dismissed, or it was at least her hours were cut or something. I'd have to look more into this. But essentially, the finding by the court was that Abercrombie & Fitch was responsible for her termination, and this was in violation of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Title 7, I believe, and it was in part because of many different court cases and the idea of intentional discrimination. So the only justice in this case to dissent in this 8-1 decision was Clarence Thomas, and he actually wrote a pretty lengthy dissenting opinion. This is one where Clarence Thomas is actually correct. He is wholly correct in this decision, and every other justice is not, because of what they argue is lunacy. This is absolute lunacy that this can be interpreted as intentional discrimination. The fact is, and Clarence Thomas rightly identified it, this is saying this specific person who is religious deserves an exception to the rules that apply to everyone. And the thing that isn't said in this, at least not that I can see, is that if this was any other religious group, if this was any other fucking religious group, this wouldn't have reached the Supreme Court. This would not have reached the Supreme Court, but because this is a Muslim girl, this goes all the way to the Supreme Court. This is ruled 8-1 in favor of her being able to do whatever the fuck she pleases, to everyone else's loss, to Abercrombie's loss, to every other employee's loss. They have to follow the look policy. They have to dress professionally in accordance to that corporation's policy. And I'm not in favor of corporations. I'm not a very corporate person. I really dislike big corporations, and especially petty corporations, like in this case with Abercrombie. I don't think it's a very genuine corporation. It seems to be very petty. But the fact remains is that this is a clear exception to a neutral policy in favor of someone specifically because they are religious. Because they are religious, they can do what the fuck they please. And last time I checked, we aren't living in a fucking theocracy. We haven't codified, at least not yet, which religions are more true than the rest. But it seems to me that every single instance that it is given, every single instance that our Supreme Court or our Congress or any fucking agency that works for our government bends over backward to give every single possible advantage to the religious. They got to be exempt to different rules and different standards that everyone else fucking follows. How many Christians in this nation, millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions, could have worked for Abercrombie & Fitch without imposing their fucking religious beliefs, without talking about religion, without making religion a fucking issue? But the fact is that this Muslim girl could not leave her religion at the fucking store entrance. She has to bring and fucking impose her religion on every fucking person she runs into. This is what I don't like. This is what I find un-American. Because this is not egalitarianism. This is not equality. This is not everyone working from the same position. This is the government imposing, in this case, the Supreme Court, imposing special exceptions for the religious. And it's unconstitutional. It is unconstitutional. This is clearly, flagrantly unconstitutional, in which you are saying, because we have this one specific law that was created in the 20th century that has this type of interpretation to this specific portion of it, implying intentional discrimination, when this essentially is a neutral policy. This is not a discriminatory policy towards any religion, towards any fucking person. It is simply a matter of dress code. It is saying, as a company, we have these standards for how you are going to represent our company by working for us. And this is the Supreme Court saying, no, sorry, like 99% of people would have to adhere to this, but sorry, we have this one girl, this one person who's Muslim. She can do whatever the fuck she wants. Because if you tell her that, like everyone else, she has to wear a certain type of thing in order to work at our company, that's discrimination. Because she's Muslim. That's discrimination. Every other fucking person in this country, whether Christian, atheist, any other perspective on fucking religion, if it was any other fucking person, they would be totally within their right, the company, say, no, you have to follow our dress code or you're fucking fired. You can't work here if you aren't going to follow our standards. You don't have a right to work here. We've in good faith listened to you. We've allowed you to take our tests and seen whether you qualify to work for us, but it is simply the fact that you aren't willing to follow the policy every other person in this company follows. This is a neutral policy that you say you are unwilling to follow, and so in that case we're going to dismiss you. And because of that, she's the exception to the rule. She is no longer equal to me. If I walked in there and I was wearing some stupid shit, they would let me go. They wouldn't keep me there. I wouldn't be allowed. But because she's wearing a fucking headscarf, oh, that's discrimination. That's discrimination. Because she's a Muslim. We all know this is the reason. We all fucking know if it was any other fucking group, it wouldn't have been an issue. They would have lost. It would have been Abercrombie and Fitch, in which it would have been an 8-1 decision in their fucking favor. It seems to me that the only group in this country that people are willing to bend over backwards, are willing to accommodate and change every fucking thing they do in order to cater to, are Muslims. I don't see any other group in this country that is being catered to utterly. That isn't just religious, right? It isn't just religious groups that are being catered to by giving every fucking tax break and every other fucking benefit, special auditing rules. They get all of it. They get every fucking thing. Even if you look at Alito's opinion on this, it was ridiculous. It was fucking ridiculous because it contradicts the fact that, yeah, she never said anything about her religion, so they didn't know. They didn't fucking have any idea that this was going to be an issue, and it says right in the fucking case, they didn't know this was going to be a fucking problem before it was a problem. Before she showed up and was wearing the fucking headscarf, and they said, hey, that's in violation of our look policy, you can't wear that, and then it became an issue. I don't really understand why it is that we are the most religious country in the fucking world. Why can't we understand the interpretation of the Constitution in the way that the Founding Fathers clearly meant it? A group of fucking deists who created this fucking country, who were very clear in the way that they made the laws. I don't remember them writing a fucking amendment that said, oh, if you're religious, you could just do whatever the fuck you want. You can do whatever the fuck you please. Any company you work for, you can do whatever the fuck you want. You could wear whatever the fuck you want. You don't have to listen to any standard that every other person has to follow. There are special exceptions for you because you're religious. Is it bad enough that we live in a country that could be making billions more dollars a year in fucking tax revenue simply because every fucking religious group in this country deserves a fucking exception to the rule? They get special auditing rules. They get fucking no taxes. Every fucking person. If you aren't religious, fuck you. You can't get elected. You don't get any tax benefits. Fuck you. If our founding fathers were alive today, they would be in the minority from being deists. And no one seems to understand that. No one in this fucking country seems to fucking understand that. That we continue to make exceptions for the religious at everyone else's expense. Everyone that either doesn't care or doesn't see themselves as above everyone else or doesn't want to be the exception to the rules simply wants to be equal to other members of the society. This is special snowflake fucking policy. I'm sorry, I didn't remember when we drafted and passed a new amendment to the Constitution, the special snowflake amendment, where if you are a special snowflake, you can do whatever the fuck you please. But if you aren't, fuck you. I know that this is a more complicated case, but it is irritating. It is extremely irritating to me that I don't think the ACLU would have done this if she wasn't Muslim. They would not have done this if it wasn't something they can champion fucking social justice. If this wasn't one more social justice victory for a bunch of fucking hipsters that don't see themselves as equal to everyone else in their society. They're the special snowflakes. They deserve to be held to a special standard, unlike everyone else in society. It is not egalitarianism. This is discriminatory towards every other person that follow that fucking policy. They follow the standard, this chick doesn't. Why? Because she is a special snowflake. I utterly disagree with the opinions of the justices in this, other than fucking Thomas. Because he's the only one that understands that this is fucking making an exemption for someone that's religious. This is the government saying to a company, you're not allowed to have standards for religious people. If there are religious people, they are allowed to do whatever the fuck they want. And last time I checked, we were a secular nation. And this is why it is important for people that consider themselves to be conservative Christians. The only way that you're going to win in this country is going to be if you saddle up and fucking side with atheists. If you saddle up and side with the people that are trying to get secularism back in fucking place in this country. Because you are losing and we're losing. Those of us that want to see an egalitarian society where all religious groups, regardless how big or small they are, follow the fucking rules and stand as equal to everyone else. If you want to see that happen, you better saddle the fuck up, deal with your shit, and start allowing those of us that also don't want to see theocratic assholes running the show. And you have to get your shit together and join us. Because we're fucking 3% of this country. If you include the pussy agnostics who are probably fucking backing this chick because it's, oh man, social justice, then it's even less. It just amazes me. This is yet another blow to secularism in the United States. Another fucking declaration that if you're religious, you have no standards. You can do whatever the fuck you want.